I actually love that announcement, that feature.
Yeah, your
Means I don't
voice
have to
changed
say
there,
it.
Ken.
The only thing better is we could put a different voice, like Corky's voice, on there.
I keep
All
thinking I'm
right.
going to leave as soon as I hear that, but then I realize, no, I shouldn't. I need to listen.
Exactly. All right, let's do roll call. Corky, are you here?
I'm here.
All right. Nikki, as I mentioned, is unable to attend. Kenzie, you here?
I'm here.
All right. Nancy?
I'm here.
All right, and Ken Anderton's here, so I think we've got quorum. All right, is there any public testimony?
Peggy Yates.
Hey,
Just a surprise.
it's nice to see you.
It's
It is.
great.
No,
You
I just wanted to be here for the employee piece.
Yes,
Thank you.
we really appreciate you joining us, and already retirement is looking really good, Peggotty.
I'm not complaining so far.
I want to make sure you understand we miss you, and so
I miss everyone, but I don't miss the work. Sorry. I love the work. It's good.
Well, I strive to be there one day, Peggotty.
You will. Just don't do it my way out, the last 2 months of it.
Yeah, I'm hoping to avoid that. All right. Looks like we don't have public testimony other than Peggotty. I guess feel free to join in as we go along on especially on the topic you're here for. So,
Thank you.
All right, let's move on to contract approvals. What do we got? We got Nick up.
Nick is on vacation. I don't believe we have anything for you today, and we're working on figuring out how to put that into the agenda when we do and when we don't. But I believe we're good to go on that for today. All
right. Well, hey, we're ahead of schedule then, because we're going to do rate approval partnership work, and Kelly's up, and you're ready.
Okay, good morning. This is a pretty standard approval that this board does every year. We update the labor rates and equipment rates to make sure that we're covering any adjustments in employee salaries and additional employees and additional positions that we have. Also, the crew takes a look each year to compare our pricing for the equipment to make sure that we're kind of within a reasonable range of what equipment is being leased for. And so the resolution that you have in your packet reflects those changes. And then once you approve this resolution, we will use those rates to update the interdistrict IGAs for service provision that you all do with Pen 1, Pen 2, SDIC, JCA, and Urban District when that agreement becomes effective. And then we also will use the higher overhead set of rates to update our agreements with the port, Multnomah County, Troutdale, and other service agreements that we have that the operations crew does. So are there any questions about the rates or the resolution or anything?
If I may share with the board, Mr. Chair, I have one thing I want to share so you're aware of it.
Yeah, go for it.
We did get questions from board member from Pen 2 and from SDIC asking to understand a little bit better how we put this together. And they raised, I think, some interesting questions and thoughts about it. So I expect Nick and I to probably reach out to a variety of board members to say, hey, there's an opportunity to join us for a conversation about how we do this, to see if there's some ways to make it more transparent and so everybody understands it. So we may engage in that work beginning this summer and would be bringing any changes back to you. But we think there's an opportunity to true that up and help people understand how we do it. So we'll be working on that going forward. Nick was interested in that before we heard from these two board members who were interested in ensuring they understood it. So,
And in the meantime, our overhead rates are just going to remain the same as they were last year.
and we think it's a reasonable number. We think the methodology that we use to get to that number could potentially be updated.
Great. Any other questions? Looks like we have to do a approval on this one. Could I get a motion to approve?
Sure, I'll do one. Thank you for putting it in the text of the agenda, Emily. I move to approve resolution 2021-06-01, authorizing overhead charges and rates for projects and services outside the district's services.
Thank you, Nancy. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. All right. I think the next item there is, which I've been waiting for, is the budget discussion. Casey, you're up. And Casey, we can't hear you.
How foolish of me. I'll be working from the Word document that's in your packet entitled MCDD 2021-22 Proposed Budget Summary Changes from May 27 meeting. Before we get going with all of this, there is one significant update since this got written and sent out, and that is that we found that we're expecting an extra $350,000 next year in revenue that was not budgeted before a couple of days ago. We were going to receive money from the Energy Trust of Oregon last year, actually, for projected energy savings from the new pumps at Pump Station 1. That got delayed. For some reason, they ran out of money or credits or something. So we will be getting that next year. And through an oversight somewhere along the line, we didn't get that into the budgeted revenues until it just kind of stumbled in front of me. Liz Edgar was telling me that the amount wasn't going to be quite so much. And I said, but that's not even in the budget yet. Anyway, we're looking at another.
You tripped over $350,000?
I tripped over $350,000. It wasn't that bad a fall because I had $12,000 and a couple of mistakes somewhere else. So it's only a $338,000 trip. I've been doing this kind of work a long time. I know there are surprises that pop up during the process every year. Some years are good years and some years are bad years. This year, we got this at the last minute, and we also had changes that we had to make to the beginning balance based on the last year's, the 1920 audit that gave us another $160,000 or something. So it's been a good month for MCDD on the revenue side. The bottom line is I can go through all this stuff, but it's kind of hard because what I've written is wrong on the revenue and ending balance side by $338,000. But what I will say is the total budget is now just over $17 million. It's 17,172 and change. Revenue is 8.9 million instead of 8.6. And the deficit is down from the 1.7 that I had in the memo to 1.3 million. More than all of that is drawing from the capital loan proceeds in the capital reserve. So outside of the capital projects that are getting paid with the loan money, you're not running a deficit this year for just regular operations, which is a good thing. And ending balance is looking to be about $6.9 million. So the change is the total amount of the budget is up $1,578,000. Beginning balance is up $1.25 million, and revenue is not down, it is up $308,000. The ending balance is about $1.5 million. You'll see the beginning balance went up a lot, $1,269,000. 168 of that was from adjustments to conform with the audit. Revenue was up assessment revenue from the last projection has been coming in well, so we're looking to be up 162,000 from what we told you in May. Contract revenue is up 158,000. Most of that is from the other districts for time that we charge working for them. And spending is down $750,000 from the last estimate. Personnel down 210, M&S down 229,000. Various and sundry things. Is there anything big in there? Not really. Nothing jumps out as a six-figure item or anything. And capital spending is down 343,000 from the earlier estimate, largely in equipment and vehicle replacement. And the biggest chunk of that wasn't spent, not going to be spent this year, is replacement of barges, which is an oldie but a goodie, but it's also in next year's budget. Revenue is up to $8.9 million. That's 300,000 from the last time, 308. Talked about that. In this version of the budget, which you don't have, you do have before you, I'm sorry. Assessments are down $24,000 because we are proposing that the assessment increase be only 9% instead of the 9.5% we talked about last time. Did have a couple of errors. I was still counting revenue from the city and the port for the McBride Slough project, but Bill tells me the work that we're doing there this year is not eligible for them to pay. So that's 12,000 we don't have. And then the 350,000 from the Energy Trust is added. Spending $10,226,000 is up a little from last time, $65,000. A little more for projects for invasive species. Accounting is asking for, and this is a very justified thing, $12,000 for electronic timesheets in the AccuFund payroll module. We're well behind the times in how we account for our time. And $10,000 in admin expenses, 5,000 of which is for will be ongoing, the cost of maintaining the AccuFund payroll module, and $5,000 in licenses, permits, and fees associated with a project done a few years ago at the Bridgeton Levee that people are ready to talk about if you want to know more details. Ending balance, the reserves are up to 6.9 million. Bigger beginning balance, higher revenue, slight increases in spending, and we're spending $1.33 million more than we're bringing in. But as I said, about $1.5 million of that is for capital projects. So the deficit is smaller than at your last meeting by nearly $250,000. So summary, where are we? Focusing on assessments. I ran some scenarios with the extra $338,000 that we happen to have, and it looks like a 9% increase for 21-22 could be followed by some years of 8.5%. This is better than the 9.5% pretty much across the board until consolidation we were looking at last time, which is great news. You could get down to 8% this year if you wanted to, but then you'd have bigger bumps later, and the conservative fiscal budget person that I am says that you're counting on all your assumptions and projections to be right. They never are. Plan for them to be a little on the bad side instead of the good side. So I think the prudent course is to stay with your 9% assessment increase. Probably be a little lower than we thought it was in the out years, but we have to see what the out years bring. That's all I got.
Right. Casey, thanks for bringing that down. As always, you make finance look easy, or budgeting look easy. I wish my budget at home was that easy and I could explain it as well as you do. Any questions?
So this is Nancy.
Go ahead, Nancy.
Okay, it's not a question, it's a comment. It's something that I learned sometime over this last year, and so I want to share it with the rest of the board. Some of you will know this, some of you might not. So just think about setting rates that that if you need to take a hit in rates, it's good to load it up front, and then your rates can go down, because if you keep pushing it down the road, it actually increases the rates over time and has some sort of cumulative bad effect. So that's a layman's version. Casey, you can correct me if I'm wrong about that, but we were talking about, you know, settling rates, maybe pushing them back, pushing them forward, but it's always better to take the hit up front and you can lower them later.
Right. Just what you're doing is you're having a higher base on which to build. So in order to get X amount of revenue, the percentage increase doesn't have to be as big if what you're starting at is higher.
Oh, it's that simple. Well, there you go. Anyway, I learned that because SDIC decided they were facing a series of rate increases and they just like front loaded it in 1 year.
Yep.
And I was like, oh, why would you do that? And now I know. So I just wanted to share that because I figured if I didn't know, maybe there's at least one other person who doesn't. So that's it.
Thanks, Nancy. Kenzie, I think you had a question or comment.
Yeah, thanks, Nancy. A couple of quick questions on the contract revenues. I assume we do like a forecasting process at the beginning of the year with the other districts to determine that. I'm just curious if there was a notable driver in that change this year.
It's based largely, because it's very hard to predict, it's largely based on the history of the current year. We've seen the payments from the other districts jump up toward the end of this year. They're higher than we expected. As I mentioned, I think $150,000 or something was an increase in contract revenue, most of which, almost all of it, was from the districts. The projections for what those charges were going to be went up significantly in the 2 months between March and May. So we base it largely on that, because other than that, it's very hard to predict, like impossible. It's fickle. How much staff is going to be working in the other districts, in which district, and on what projects and the like over the course of the coming year. So we largely do it based on history with a great bias toward what the most recent year is.
That makes sense. No crystal ball, unfortunately.
No.
Thanks. The question was I'm sorry, did I interrupt? No. Any notable drivers in the delta of the assessment revenue year to year?
I would have to ask Janet, who's not here today, exactly why she thinks the revenue has gone up in the last couple of months, but I've looked at the records and they kind of kicked up in the last couple of months in an off season for collecting assessment revenue. I mean, most of it comes in the fall, but it does come periodically. And we've had a better spring as far as collecting assessment revenue this year than we expected.
Okay, thanks.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I don't know, Bill, do you have any information about what drove the increase in the contract revenue in the last couple months? Was there a particular thing or things? And if you don't know, that's okay. I know we don't have Randy on the line, but we may know a little bit about what the staff was doing to drive that revenue up.
Not offhand. I'll just need to circle back with the board at a later date.
Great. Any other budget discussion questions? All right, and remind me what the process is for the budget adoption.
Thank you. Next Tuesday at the format, this budget, as it's been changed with the changes I talked about, will be before you for approval, along with the resolution has both the amount of the levy and the total amount of the budget in it. So if there is a change or two, I expect they would be very minor. I would call those to your attention at the meeting on Tuesday. I don't expect anything to change between now and then. And that's it. All of the budgets, the 4 districts in the JCA will all be voting on their budgets next Tuesday.
Great. Thank you, Casey. Do we have anything to add to the budget, the board, that you want Casey to take into consideration for the next approval? Okay, hearing none, I'll say no. No, I think it's going to be a pretty streamlined cleanup of this budget you've presented, and we'll see you.
Yep.
We'll see you at the format meeting for approval.
That's the way we like it. Thank you all.
All right, thanks. All right, looks like we're going to talk about the capital improvement plan. Bill, you're up.
All right, I'm excited about it too. So the document that I sent a little after the meeting package went out shows the full CIP information and packet, I guess you would call it. The long and short of it is that the values, the budget and the schedule has not changed since your late May meeting. So what this document shows or includes is the narrative that supports that CIP schedule and budget. For those who have seen this before, have seen previous versions of this document, it will look very similar. I'll just do a quick overview. There's 4 pages in the main body of the report beyond the executive summary and introduction. It's pretty boilerplate. The second page deals with the overview of the CIP development process at the district. We have 4 steps. We identify what those we feel are appropriate projects to consider, moving to a point where we will only be considering projects that are fully documented and have been vetted before we get to this point. And we're close, not quite there. So that's step 1. Step 2 is we apply 4 criteria to each project and weigh them as noted here to identify how each project addresses flood risk, operational efficiency, and so forth. And once those values are accumulated and the projects are ranked accordingly, we go to step 3 where we consider these series of qualitative criteria that are added value, and for those projects that have these type of features, we examine their ranking compared to others in the vicinity. So if one project has a couple of these factors checked off and other projects don't within this more or less the same criteria from step 2, then we'll bump up those projects a little higher in the priority list. Step 4 is a follow-on to the previous step, and specifically if there are any projects that deal with immediate regulatory compliance or have partner financial support, those get moved to the top of the list right away. Pages 3 and 4 are a narrative of the changes in the primarily the 5-year CIP budget. This year, as you saw from in your late May meeting, there is a little bit of an increase, a little bit, 1.3 million of a total of $11.6 million dollar 5-year CIP. To me, there's a big swap there. Last year, we were finishing up the big projects at Pump Station 1. And so those have been finished, so that money is no longer in the 5-year CIP, but what comes in place of that is the PMLS design phase projects or PED phase and 1 year of construction. So there is a net increase of 1.3 million because of those things. I believe we walked through the other newer projects that you may not have seen from past years at your last meeting. I'm happy to go back through any of those as you would like. There are 2 appendices to this report, and Appendix A should look familiar. This is the schedule of the 5-year CIP along with the dollar amounts, and Appendix B represents individual project summaries for each of those items in the 5-year outlook. So think that provides a general overview for you, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have. The intent is to make sure I understand what adjustments need to be made from your board. So I have a document that I can present to you next Tuesday that could also be approved without too much fanfare.
Any questions for Bill? Nancy, go ahead.
Looking through my screens. Bill, I just want to say that again, I really appreciate your one-page summary with a picture for each project. It just, it just gives you so much information in a very short period of time. And I just think it's very efficient. So thank you for doing that.
Really cool when it's backed up with the tour where he shows you each of the things that you need to fix too. So when someday maybe we can get you all out and see them.
Great idea. Really have to kind of get out there to understand some of this visually and see it. So I echo that. Great job, Bill. Thanks for all the hard work and trying to, again, boil this down to sometimes those executive summary one-page summary is really helpful for busy board members to understand better.
Yep. Unfortunately, this time around there are 39 one-page summaries, so there are a number of items in there, but I'm glad it's of value to you.
And I'm sure that every board member memorizes every single piece of those. So. All right. Any other questions?
Quick question, and maybe we can take it offline, but just out of curiosity, this SCADA system upgrade is really interesting, and I'd love to learn about like the cybersecurity work that is going along with that. But again, happy to take that offline if that's better.
Yeah, that would be great in part because I can't speak very informatively about that. There are some other staff that I need to bring in for that conversation, but I'm happy to have that, and let me work with Emily offline to find a time where it's convenient for you.
You know, I would suggest maybe that be a topic at a future board meeting too. I mean, if you need something sooner, that's fine, but it's always an interesting issue because it involves our emergency preparedness, and it has to do with, you know, are we connected to the electrical grid, for example? Are we dependent upon that? And, you know, it's a series of dominoes essentially, and we've gone through it before, but I think that'd probably be, it'd be worth doing a refresher course as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's a standalone board topic, and also I think it would be helpful in probably an executive session to talk about the vulnerabilities and risks that we're facing right now as well.
Okay, let me work with Emily and Jim to find a good time on a meeting coming up.
All right, thanks, Bill. I wanted to mention that Nikki did say she was going to be absent. She did let me know, going back to the last agenda item, that she supported the proposed budget. So great job on that, Casey. And she's got a couple of comments as we go down the agenda items. I'll just speak out, and I've sent it also on to Emily to put it into the record. All right, now with the next. I've got dual screens here, and I click back and forth. It takes me a minute sometimes to get back to the agenda. We don't need anything else on the capital improvement plan. That's not a voting item right at this point. So let's move on to item G, which is the IGA between MCDD and I call it the F squad because I don't like all that's a mouthful, but the new urban district. Hong, you're up.
Hello from the Redwoods. Can you all hear me okay? Great. There's nothing like a big redwood tree to make you feel small in this world or universe. It's pretty awesome down here. But I appreciate your allowing me to be flexible about this meeting. So this agenda item is to seek your approval and authority to sign the IGA between this district and the urban district for your staff to provide, to continue to provide services to the urban district and the initial board. Currently, as you know, staff is providing support to the urban district primarily through the IGA, through the JCA in the urban district using funds from the Oregon Business Grant. With this IGA, the urban district would be using its own funds with the help of the city of Portland, the additional $6 million to finance and continue its work in this initiation phase. The framework was presented to you at the last meeting. We presented it again to the urban district recently on Monday. They approved it. And so your approval here would just be following suit. The terms are the same as before. We are going to fold into that the new rates that Kelly had presented to you earlier that you had just approved. The only clarification I want to make here is the resolution calls for the board to approve and authorize the executive director to sign the IGA. I would just ask that in this case, you just approve, and we'll seek signatures of the respective board presidents to sign this IGA, just so Jim is not conflicted out on his multiple ED roles. And so with that, staff will pursue the appropriate signature from the respective presidents. So if I'll open up to questions, otherwise I'll seek your approval for resolution 2021-0602.
Any questions?
Oh, I don't have a question. Well, actually, I do have a question for Hong. This is an IGA between MCDD and the F-Squad. But when MCDD dissolves, then the permanent board comes into creation. So in a way, really, we're just setting this up for an IGA or a transfer of employees to the permanent board, not actually to the F-Squad. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think it lays the foundation for that transition so that the initial board, the F-Squad, is familiar with the work of staff and becomes familiar with staff members. But yeah, this is intended to be folded into that transition.
Yeah, because we don't have a permanent board to make an IGA with right now.
Correct.
And so there was a good conversation at the F-Squad on this, but I sensed just a minor amount of hesitation, perhaps, less push for this than what you're sensing here with this board. So I think that's all more important for us to do something like this, for us to send a clear message to the employees and to the F-Squad. This is important.
Gorky, can I ask, you said the Urban Flood Safety Water Quality District was not at all hesitant?
I sensed a minor amount of hesitancy.
Okay.
I sense more hesitancy with them than we have here at MCDD.
Oh, okay. And I just want to be clear, Ken, are we on G or H or both?
You know, I was a bit confused there too, because they're kind of rolling.
Yeah.
Each. So I think what we need to focus on is G.
I'm sorry, I'm on H.
Well, that is really an important one for us to talk about. But yeah, let's focus on item G, the services agreement, and then we'll move on to item H, is the employee transfer IGA. And I think Peggotty has a few words she wants to say too on that. Don't want to put words in your mouth, Peggotty, but you've really worked hard on employee transfer IGA. But is there any questions on the services agreement? All right, hearing none, do I have a motion to approve the resolution?
I can do that. I move to approve resolution number 2021-06-02, approving an IGA between MCDD and the UFSWQD for administrative support.
Could I get a second?
I'll second that.
All right, all in favor? Aye.
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 All right, unanimous support there. The motion carries. Now let's talk about item H, which is the employee transfer IGA.
All right, I'll prepare an introduction here, and then Corky and Peggy can jump in. So we presented, this is being presented to you for final approval and execution of an IGA to transfer MCDD employees to the urban district, or in the words of Jim Middow, to retain the talents of this district and expertise of district to be absorbed and transferred to the urban district upon the consolidation and dissolution of this drainage district, which we expect to be maybe 5 years out. The original framework was presented to the urban district back in April and presented to this board in May. You at that meeting expressed some concern and thank you for it with respect to the loss of some accrued vacation leave. At the time, the original proposal was set for staff to only be able to retain 80 hours up to the new district, and whatever is left, they can either cash out as an MCDD employee or lose it. So with that, with your expression of concern, we went and looked and made changes so that the retainment of the vacation leave is consistent with the employee handbook and the rules of MCDD, which I, in the memorandum, provided for you the pertinent excerpt, which at the moment allows for staff to accrue up to 250 hours, after which they either need to spend it or cash out. We presented this proposal to the urban district just this Monday. There was, to Corky's point, some discussion about that, but in the end, they did approve it for signature. So I do provide a red line in my memorandum of the proposed changes between the original proposal and today's final proposal. They mainly, the most significant of which is really the leave issue. There are other revisions to the recital that are purely factual. So with that, I'll ask for your approval of this resolution, pending any discussions or questions and contribution from Corky and Peggy. Thank you.
All right, any questions? And then, actually, Peggy, do you want to say something first, and then we can get on to the questions?
You're on mute.
Haven't heard that in like 10 days.
And
Really
Peggy
good.
thought that was going to last time ever she's going to hear that.
I'm not sure my family will do it to me frequently, but you know, I thank Corky for bringing up there, you know, if there is a concern on the urban district side, but I think what people need to recognize is the greatest assets that this new district is going to receive is not just the hard assets of the levee system and the pump stations, but really the greatest asset is the employees themselves, and providing an opportunity for them to be as brought in the same way, and as importantly, I just think it's critical. It's gonna improve the new district and keep it strong and provide a great foundation. And on the other side of that coin, the other piece that I think is also critical is you have 35 employees who have worked hard and continue to work hard on this transition. And but for them, it couldn't happen. And being able to provide them the security of knowing that in 5 years, in 2025, they have a job and that they are valued for that, the work they've done, is critically important. And I don't want to be remiss, and this has been really an important item for me for quite a while, but I also want to thank Hong for all the work she's done in putting this together, because without Hong's legal expertise through this process, we wouldn't be where we are. And prioritizing it in advance makes me be able to go, not that you all care, but helps me to go into retirement feeling I've done everything I can for the organization, because the most important, an organization is only good as the people that work there. And you've got some of the most incredible, hardworking, focused, dedicated staff, and nothing can be more apparent than the work they've done over the last 18 months during COVID, when there were long hours, long days of setting up a new government under less than ideal conditions. So I think this ensures continuity of the organization and increases the efficiencies of both, because people are going to be on board and moving towards something that they know they are a part of down the road. So thank you for letting me speak up. And I think this is critically important.
Thank you, Peggy, for being here and taking time from your busy retirement schedule, because
It's moving.
I know how important this is. We've had conversations about it, and it shows how much you cared about the organization and its people. So it's really touching. With that, I'll open it up to questions that the board has. And Corky, did you want to elaborate anything on the? Okay.
Yeah.
My sense of the urban questions were related to any potential liabilities, and were we saddling them with some unfunded liabilities? And of course, if we're accruing vacation and other costs for employees at MCDD, we're gonna have those assets set aside to cover those liabilities. So those will transfer, and there would be no additional new unfunded liability for the urban. And I think once we described that, people felt a little more comfortable. So, but it was a legitimate and a good question to ask. So that's my recollection. Others may have a supplemental one.
That's helpful, Jim. I was wondering if there was more education we could provide or something, but it sounds like it's pretty simple if they were concerned about liabilities. But yeah, the assets coming with it, so nothing to be concerned about.
Yeah, there was a little bit of minor concern also about, well, they have to take on, for example, the vacation time. They have to accept that vacation policy going forward. And I think we satisfied them with the answer to that as well. There were good questions, like I said, and I don't mean to be overstating it. It was just a little bit of like, well, all right, we got to, I think it came out of the fact that that board doesn't know the employees as well as you do. And once they get to know them, they're going to feel exactly like what you just heard from Peggy. But they're not there yet. So this is part of telling them, yeah, this is really important.
Yeah, and I'll just say, I think I mentioned it last time, but I think this is really, having this in place is very important. I mean, you can say it's 4 years away, but you know, those 4 years go pretty fast, and people looking around because they're not sure they're going to be taken on in 4 years. It's, even if they think they're probably going to be taken on in 4 years, it's kind of a crappy feeling. So I am glad that we are able to provide our excellent staff with this kind of stability, because I think it's important.
I'll just say that, Nancy, and say, in addition, what I've heard is it's not only amazing individuals, but like the culture and the dynamic, but collectively within the organization is important. And it seems like this is a way to preserve that.
Yeah, fully agree that, you know, this might be one of the most important topics that we cover in a while, because without the employees of MCDD that have the historical knowledge, the passion, there's really, we have the hard assets, but you know, we need motivated, passionate employees that are talented to execute on some very difficult tasks we have ahead of us. So I really appreciate Hong for drafting this at Peggotty. I really appreciate you pushing this forward, and Jim for your support coming in the door on this, and then the board members' support. So one thing I did want to add to is Nikki, in one of her items, she said G and H, which was the previous item we just covered, and this one. Please thank Hong for changes in the leave transfer and just her overall work on this. So just wanted to make sure that Nikki was thinking of you as well. Any questions, any more questions or discussion? All right, well, once again, we need a motion to approve this resolution. Do I have a taker for that?
I would love to do it. So, and we're authorizing not the executive director, but who is it? Do I have to say anything there?
2 board presidents.
2 board presidents,
Yeah.
okay.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, I move to approve resolution 2021-06-03, approving and authorizing the respective board presidents to execute an IGA with Urban Flood Safety Water Quality District to retain and transfer Multnomah County Drainage District's employees upon its dissolution.
Well done.
And
Yeah,
I'll
I was gonna
second that.
All right, we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And well done, Nancy. That was perfectly executed. Motion carries. And
Yeah, I did a hard job.
and motion carries. And thanks again for the work on this. Really appreciate it. All right, moving on to construction project overview.
Before you move on, I just want to say thank you, and thank you again. This will serve you well. So,
And
and I
thank
can
you.
ride in the sun. I can ride into the sunset and drink tequila and feel good about it. Thank you.
And just to reiterate, being new, this is really important to the team, and it's going to help me and the other senior leaders really help make the employees feel valued. And again, thank you guys for helping with this. It's really important.
Yeah, thank you, Jim, and thank you, Peggotty. Again, it was pretty amazing that you showed up, Peggotty, to be here for this moment. So I appreciate it.
Well, I know where you live. I didn't vote for it. I was going to come hunting, so.
Well, I don't know where you live yet, but I'm going to come visit here soon when you get moved there.
That's a good thing. That's a good thing.
All right, Brian, you're up.
Can everyone hear me okay?
Yes, and we can see a pretty amazing pump station. Right.
Okay, perfect.
It's a pipe or
It's
something.
actually, I'm going to give the floor to Liz. I know my name's on the agenda, but she is queuing us up for the first presentation, and I'll be leading, I'll be from behind, so.
Okay, thanks, Brian. Hi there. I think most of us have informally met at this point through Zoom, but for those of us who haven't, I am Elizabeth Edgar, and I joined the MCDD engineering team in March of 2020. My background is 9 years as a capital project engineer for Sunrise Water Authority, who is the drinking water provider for Happy Valley and North Clackamas. And there I worked on drinking water storage, transmission, and pumping projects. My focus here at MCDD has been on delivering internal drainage capital projects, and I look forward to many more to come. My attention over the past year has been focused primarily on the construction delivery of the pump station pump replacement projects and administering the construction of the trash rakes installations. So today I will be presenting on the pump replacement project, and then there will be a brief pause for questions related to that portion of the project. And then Brian, project manager extraordinaire, will talk about the trash rake replacement project, and his presentation will also end with a brief period for questions. Brian, slide, please. So Pump Station 1 is located on the MCDD campus, and it is the primary pumping facility, and it's also the workhorse for the western portion of the MCD district. It was constructed as a replacement pump station in 1949 for the pumping facility that was taken out by the Vanport floods. The station had a major overhaul in 1998 in which pumps number 2 and number 4 were replaced. Pumps number 2 and pumps number 4 are the really heavy duty pumps, and those are intended to handle very large volumes of water for storm events. Pumps 1, 3, and 5 are the pumps we use for our everyday pumping needs and are used a large majority of the time. Those pumps were original to this station, constructed in 1949, and were regularly being taken out of service due to failure. They also have very demanding maintenance requirements to stay in service. So the purpose of this project was to increase the reliability of this station by replacing those very inefficient pumps, and also to add the first portable generator installation connection in the district to be able to operate those pumps in case of an emergency or a power outage. Slide. So to increase the reliability of the pumps and the pump station, pumps number 1 and 5 were identified as high priority capital improvement replacements in the 2014-2015 CIP cycle. And then they were added to the budget and approved the project to commence in December of 2017. And during the alternatives analysis portion of that project, it was determined that the electrical system for the existing pumps 1 and 5 would not be able to handle the existing electrical system had to be separated. So we were deleting a large portion of it to replace the pumps 1 and 5. And then the part that would remain for pumps 2 and 4 wouldn't be able to sustain the additional pumping of pump 3. And so pump 3 was added to the project scope in the spring of 2018. And then design continued through the summer of 2019, and we went through a formal procurement process to select a contractor in the fall of 2019, and I'll talk about that a little bit later in the slide, or a little bit later in the presentation. And we signed NTP with the lowest responsible bidder in November of 2019. The submittal portion of the construction project started in December of 2020. And then, as I previously mentioned, I joined in March of 2020 and became familiar with the project prior to the on-site construction kicking off in June. It was very important that the station be fully back online before the wet season. So it had to be operable by mid-November, and it was, yay. And then we continued to work on telemetry programming through this spring, and then I will have the paperwork and administration loose ends wrapped up for the project by the end of this fiscal year. Slide. So how did we do on our project objectives? I would say that they were all very successfully accomplished. The project was sequenced so that we would have at least one of our large pumps and one of our small pumps online and operable at any given time. And so construction was sequenced with the demolition of pumps 3 and pumps 5 starting in June. We installed the replacement pumps in August and September, and then pump 1 was demolished and replaced in October. Slide. We also concurrently installed the first portable generator that we have in the district. And so this little setup right here connects to our electrical panel, and that is a 2,000 kilowatt portable generator that was brought in by a semi, and it is able to power pumps 1, 3, and 5, all of the trash rakes and the telemetry. So once the generator has been hooked up, this station can be remotely operated. So that's great in case of an emergency, because it allows our ops staff to be able to focus on other portions of the district and feel confident that pump station 1 is running efficiently. Slide. Okay, and then this was also our first installation of a variable frequency drive in the district, and that's that middle picture there. And that is one of the reasons why we are able to operate this station so much more efficiently than in the past. The variable frequency drive allows us to operate the pumps at different speeds, ranging from about 70% of its maximum speed to its maximum speed. And the pumps operate more efficiently the slower they go. Think of driving a car. You're going to get the best efficiency at a mid-range instead of just slamming on the gas. And so that's true of the pumps too. So that allows us to normally operate the pumps a little bit lower and a little bit slower, but then we do have the ability to operate it at our full speeds if we need to. And then the new pumps and motors are also substantially more efficient than their previous counterpart. I equate it to the new pumps are like driving a 2020 Prius, and the old pumps are like driving a 1950s Thunderbird or convertible. Like the efficiency is so substantially different. Slide. And because our new installations are so much more efficient, this gave us the opportunity to partner with the Energy Trust of Oregon for this project, and these numbers probably will need to be updated. We're finding it's not quite as efficient as we had originally anticipated, but there is still a substantial reduction in energy consumption. So we're still operating at maybe 50% of the energy consumption we originally were. Our annual energy savings are pretty substantial, and we are looking to get a rebate maybe more in the $350,000 to $400,000 range now, based upon that slightly less efficient factor. But by any means, that is a very large sum of money that we were being awarded for doing a project that needed to get done in the first place. So that feels like a huge win. Slide. Okay, and so there were a few lessons learned as pertaining to this presentation, and one is to be flexible for scope adjustments based upon the cost benefit. So that is in regards to adding pump 3. That was not originally included in the scope of design, but going through alternatives analysis, not only was it figured out that it was required, but it also helped to further serve the project objectives of having greater reliability. So that was making sure that all of our infrastructure is updated to current standards. And another lesson learned was pre-qualifying contractors was difficult, but very worthwhile. So we had 6 contractors place a bid, and 4 of the contractors were disqualified for different reasons, mostly because a lot of those contractors did not submit complete bid packages, and they also were not able to meet our minimum pumping requirements. So the contractors had to submit a proposed pump as part of their bid package. And they and the contractors definitely had trouble finding pumps that met all of our qualifications. And so by being able to eliminate contractors based upon those requirements, we ended up with a very qualified contractor who did great work throughout the project. And then another lesson learned, and I think Brian might touch on this a little bit too, is going to be to have one general contractor on the project at a time. So in addition to having Rachi leading the pump replacement project of the pump replacement portion of this project, we were also doing the self-installation of the trash rigs. And it was just a lot of bodies on site at one time. Each of the different projects had different shutdown requirements. There was a point in time where we had 2 different sets of electricians and a hydraulic pipe installer in the lower level of the pump station at one time. And that ended up causing some conflict. But we all worked through it. We all came together. Slide. And so the successes are far more numerable and much more easily celebrated than the lessons learned. So as I mentioned earlier, we were able to get all of the pumps online before that November wet season. So the project was delivered on time. We met all of our project objectives of increasing reliability, efficiency, and installing a portable generator. The project was delivered under the budget that we had borrowed through the capital loan. We had such a qualified contractor, and they were a great partner through construction, and that's part of why we were able to keep the change order costs so low throughout the project. We've substantially reduced our energy consumption at the station. And another benefit of adding a variable frequency drive is increasing pump longevity, because the pumps aren't being driven at full speed all the time. It's easier on their mechanics, and so they will have a longer lifespan. And another huge win, as we touched on earlier, is that energy trust rebate. So thank you for joining me in this presentation. Does anybody have any questions at this point?
Thanks, Liz. What do you anticipate is the lifespan of these pumps?
So the lifespan of these pumps, they should, we will do annual maintenance on these pumps, and then I anticipate that they'll need to be rebuilt at approximately the 20-year mark. And then at best practice, we would take them out of service about 40 years, but we could potentially do another 20-year rebuild at that point. You know, assuming that we take really good care of these pumps throughout their life cycle, as we definitely intend to.
And how old were the old pumps?
The old pumps were approximately 71 years. And so they were really, really just plugging along. It was very outdated machinery, mechanicals, and you could tell when you were listening to it operate. It felt like a ticking time bomb in there.
Liz, not a question, but just a comment. Good work on getting this project done. I like that you're looking at the lessons learned, as well as, you know, how we can do things better in the future, but also looking at the project successes. And also, you didn't mention COVID, but you did this during the middle of a pandemic. And so, you know, kudos to the team. And I also wanted to pass along from Nikki that, you know, she said, being an engineer herself, you know, it's great to see it was done safely and that you're celebrating the project successes. So good job.
Thank you, Ken. All right, I'm going to pass on to Brian at this point.
Thanks, Liz. And Randy, who's out in the field, is going to do his best to join us as well. He does have one slide in here. So Yeah, so anyways, my name is Brian Eberhardt. I'm a project manager at MCD. I've been here for about 6 years now, just hit my anniversary recently, which is kind of strange to think about, longest I've ever been anywhere. And I managed this project for about 3/4 of it. I didn't start off with it, actually contracted for the design engineer up front. So I got to inherit the project when some other folks left, and it was a great project for me to get to work on. It's a little different than Liz's. We did self-installation instead of having this contracted out. So that's kind of one of the main differences between the two sites. A little bit about what things were like in the past. You know, similar to Liz, our operations team was doing their best to keep old equipment working well beyond its life cycle. It's supposed to be about 15 to 20 years. We were at about 24 when we finally got this replaced. Our crew was doing a lot of regularly replacing parts, and chains were breaking, and sometimes during critical moments, like during a storm, which is not a good time to have your rakes down. The rakes, for those who aren't super familiar with pump stations, without rakes, Liz's pumps don't really work. You can't move water if you can't rake up the debris, because you have this differential that's created at the debris grates. So the rakes are really critical. And so it's nice to have brand new systems kind of going for both of these. Doesn't mean it wasn't challenging to do at the same time, as Liz indicated, but just this equipment was old. It had long cycle times, a lot of clogs, small rake heads, and doesn't have a lot of redundancy. So if something went down, we were limited on our pumps and our ability to use them. So when I inherited this project in 2018, I kind of set up some project purpose and goals for it with our operations team. The main goal is replace the existing trash rake system. We also considered replacing the, I don't know if you can see my mouse here, but we considered replacing this trough system. I ended up delaying that just for finance purposes, as well as replacing the debris grates, but just due to financing, we decided not to do that. But we focused on making sure this raking system was replaced by increasing safety, improving our cycle time, reducing overall operations and maintenance if possible, and enhancing our lifting capacity and redundancy. Similar to Liz, it's a similar timeline of the project. The main thing that is maybe different is that we had originally planned on doing the construction in 2019 in the summer. When we did our alternatives analysis, we actually, working with operations team, really defining like what they needed and what the system had been and what they needed were really different. There was a lot of things that were kind of inadequate for ideal long-term investment. And but the budget only reflected sort of replacing in kind about $400,000. So I worked with our design engineer. We did field visits to talk to operators. We looked at 3 or 4 different designs and came up with one that was well over the budget that we had authorized. And so I worked with the board members that were there at that time to really talk about, well, what can we pull back on this project? What can we do to cut costs, and while also meeting the needs of our operations team? And I just want to say the MCDD board stepped up. They got us from $400,000 up to $1 million, which, and our crew is really benefiting from that investment in our system. So thank you for being involved in that. Once we had to go ahead from the budget to be increased, we went ahead and worked on additional design and procurement. And we selected a firm out in Germany, actually, that to manufacture this. Their name is Lakeside Mirror. I'll tell you a little bit about them in a minute. And they delivered by June 2020. Our team kind of finished up a couple of details in the summer. COVID hit during all of this, so there was some small delays in getting going on the field, but our team really stepped up together and did a lot of great work on the demolition and self-installation. Randy will tell you more about kind of the successes of that here in a minute. And we were able to start up the rakes before the flood season in mid-October, and that was great. So we were able to operate them and use them, and then kind of dial in our control systems, timing, that type of thing with SCADA. And then we closed out the project in this winter. So it's now been done for a few months. We've had a chance to test it out and use it. And from what I'm hearing from the crew, they're really excited about it, and probably even more importantly, they want to use it at other pump stations. It's a good product. It's meeting their needs, and I'm excited that we made the extra work to go for the better product. So just to compare the two systems, the old system is kind of here on the right. The newer system is here on the left. So we went from 30 minutes down to 5 minutes for all of our raking. This reduces clogs when we have debris that's coming in really fast. If it gets clogged for too long, that the water differential doesn't work and the pumps shut down. That's not good. So this raking system is fast. It has redundancy. So there's 5 rakes instead of 2 rakes. It's got a bigger diameter, so it can lift more and more weight as well. And overall, there's less moving parts and less maintenance anticipated, so that's less work for our crew over the water. The biggest probably safety benefit of this is that there used to be this big boom in front of the raking system that would hold back a lot of material, and our crew would have to take a barge out there with an excavator and raking that out, and that's people with equipment over water. That's really heavy, it's dangerous. They did a great job. From what I understand, it's not been a major safety concern or risk, but we can do less of that now. This raking system is able to really cut down on the amount of time that our crew has to be out over the water with big equipment. So I'm excited about that. We were able to meet all of our project goals and like I said, surpass operations expectations with the equipment. Something that I'll highlight to you is that this is a great opportunity for MCD staff to work across departments. I'm in the planning department, Liz is in the engineering department, operations team did self-installation. We've never done this before, at least not in my time here. And it was great to work together, and we were definitely tested, you know, with the communications, working remotely, primarily myself. Liz was out there in the field with the crew, and you know, there's obviously always things that come up, but we worked through it. And I feel like I know operations better because of it. And I feel like we all kind of grew and understand each other better. So that was a real boon for me in this project. And just to let you all know, we used your money well. We had $1 million estimated. We brought it in $35,000 under that budget. And so we're able to get the work done, but also have the funds we needed throughout the project. I'm going to pass this over to Randy to talk about what does this mean to operations, the value of it, and the chance to do this self-installation.
All right. Hello, everybody. Yeah, I just start off. Yeah, I just want to thank Brian and Liz for being a part of this this whole project. As they were major key players in the overall success, from procurements to boots on the ground. Liz, you know, working with the contractors every day. I think, you know, with them and operations team together, I think it was probably the best project I've ever been a part of, and it was a huge success. So really excited and thankful to have worked with them. And yeah, safe installation. There was a lot of things going on. There was a lot of contractors on site. You know, the pump station work happening at the same time, multiple pieces of equipment. We had great communication, no injuries, no incidents, and yeah, with all those moving parts and everything, I think we did a great job at, you know, communicating every day, and you know, true success of a project is everybody going home safe, and everybody did every day. And as you can see just in this photo, I mean, we're flying in big structures and working with big equipment and stuff, so there's plenty of hazards along the way. So very proud of that work, and everybody being safe. Definitely excited we got it done in time before major flood season. And you know, we're just seeing these things, we're tweaking them as we go right now, but this is a million times better than what we had, and they're in place and in time, and setting us up for success. And this was really, you know, this is a really unique situation. We started off, I think some of you know Josh McNamee. He's asset maintenance specialist, and he's been working on this project, you know, being a real, you know, voice for operations and deep in the details and everything. And well, he broke his leg, and he was our lead guy to be on the grounds leading this job. So then so that threw a little kink into it. Our crew lead stepped in, Byron Zirkle, and then he had to leave for a month. He had a once in a lifetime vacation that he was taking. So then Corey and Charles stepped in, and it really, you know, there were some difficult moments, but really proud of our team for, you know, working through it. And there was a lot of personal growth, I think, for a lot of individuals on my team. And, you know, just being a part of this major installation, myself, the team, everybody's just that much more connected to it, really understands it. And yeah, they just showed real creativity, problem solving skills. And shout out to Liz again for being so available and working through any, you know, troubleshooting and working with the guys and listening to them. And yeah, this is a huge success. I think too, like one of the last bullets here is team building is, everybody on our team really played a big role in this, and these major projects really help us grow together and build relationships and experiences. And yeah, that was a huge success. I mean, you're constantly looking for ways to keep building this family and relationship we have as a team, and this was a big success with that. And one more thing I'd point out is somebody mentioned earlier about COVID, and we had so many barriers or just things kind of making it more difficult for us that normally when it popped up, it was COVID. I mean, we were working out there with masks and 95-degree weather, and it was difficult, but it was fun. And you might have, and I don't get out as much as I'd like to anymore, but I was able to be a part of this and stuff, and that was really fun for me. And anytime there's a crane and big stuff flying around, I really like to jump in. So I think overall it was an extremely successful project, and thank you for all the support from the boards, management, definitely Brian and Liz, and operations. I think everybody just really put their best foot forward, and it was just really fun. So I'm really proud to be a part of it.
Thanks, Randy, and thanks for coming to this while you're out in the field there. Really appreciate it. And yeah, I think two last things I'll just reiterate. One of them is because the crew working this equipment, they know it way better than if they were handed it to somebody from the contractor given to them to say, hey, here you go, here's the equipment, now you run it. Like, they know it, they've had to fine tune it, they've had to struggle with it. They've built the relationship with it that will help, I think, down the road too. So there's some benefits there that are harder to capture financially. And I do want to say that Liz, being the construction lead for this, while also the project manager for the pumps, really made things really seamlessly. I love that structure. I think that was a huge reason why it did work, even though we had the two projects the same summer, which wasn't the original plan. So huge success to Randy's team and operations for persevering, getting it done, and doing it safely. I guess, yeah, just a couple of overall lessons learned. I'd worked with Bill on this a little bit to think about what might be relevant. Both Liz and I did alternatives analysis that produced different results than we expected. Sometimes your alternatives analysis says, yep, keep going the way you thought. Sometimes it says, don't do the project. And this one was like, do the project, but you need to go up higher. You need to raise the bar so that we really make a good investment. And so I think that's just something we should keep doing. It's best practice. It's produced evidence definitely for the crew. I think another main thing is just continuing to work on our pre-design and cost estimation. I think Bill and his team with the CIP just keeps getting better and using this data from the past. I did a lot of lessons learned in kind of a final report for this, and that information will be used for informing future trash rake investments. And I think that will be helpful. So that's something we can keep working on. By doing so, we can reduce the downtime and have less projects kind of pile up on top of each other, which happened in this project. And then the last thing when considering if you want to do a self-installation versus contracting it out is really having that early discussion with operations about their internal skill sets, and just determine what needs to be contracted out, what can be done in-house, and what's the consequence of maybe the crew being pulled off of other tasks to do this. I think that's a good thing to consider early on in the project. So that's all I have. This is a picture of Corey during the wildfire smoke at the end of the project with his COVID mask on. Job well done. So, any questions?
Any questions from the board members? Just a comment for myself. Brian, Randy, thank you so much. Again, a lot of unique circumstances with COVID that was thrown your direction, and also a team member that goes down with a broken leg that you weren't anticipating. So good job, and appreciate again documenting things that work well, things that don't, and being honest about that as well.
Yeah, thanks for the opportunity, and thanks for the chance to present to you. Any other questions? Or, oh, sorry, Nancy, go ahead.
Yeah, this is Nancy, and I just wanted to point out that you all had some lessons learned, and you tried some different techniques like self-install and things like that. And you're working with, and you, Liz, as well, working as the construction manager and the PM. I mean, this is really a great investment in our staff. And so just another reason why it's great to be able to, I guess, guarantee or that IGA we signed earlier about transferring over to the Urban Flood Safety Water Quality District. We are really building up or helping our staff build themselves up to, you know, they're great assets, like Ken was saying. So staff, we appreciate you. And we also appreciate all the work you're going to do for the organization in the future as it modernizes and continues to change.
Thank you, Nancy. Yeah, it was a fun project, and I think we all grew from it. And you know, I think we're excited to do more of them and keep this momentum going.
The
Right.
lessons you shared are really insightful, and I really appreciate you having the planning, engineering, and operations voices here. It's very helpful.
Yeah, definitely. I think some organizations forget that if they miss one of those pieces, and it's really helpful to see y'all working together. So, all right, well, thanks so much. I'm gonna move us along to our next topic, unless there's any remaining questions. All right, Bill, you're back on for Fairview Lake year-round water level request.
Okay, thanks for the time. This item is on page 68 of 77 of your packet. It's got buried a little bit, but just a lot of information sent out to you this time around. Let me back you up just a little bit and get to our staff recommendation at the end here. Recall that Fairview Lake is part of the drainage system at MCDD, and there's an outlet structure that was installed, I believe, in the early 90s that replaced 2 old culverts that were there. And at that point, we started an agreement with the city of Fairview, who actually owns the structure, the outlet structure, as well as the property owners, homeowners association around that lake. And we just renewed that agreement between the 3 parties and in August of last year. We got a letter from a couple of other HOAs in the area, including the one that signed that agreement, asking us to consider if we can keep the lake levels high year-round. Sorry, one more piece of information I'm sure you understand. While the city of Fairview owns and operates the outlet structure, they're directed by us when to open and close the structure for flood control purposes. And the agreement outlines when those dates should be. And for the most part, we've been following those dates pretty closely over the last couple of decades. So the November letter came to us to ask about keeping the water levels up year-round. We usually drop them in October, and then to create some flood storage potential, and then raise it back up by May 1st to provide recreation and aesthetics for the homeowners around the lake. So at your December board meeting, we talked about this letter, and you encouraged staff to reach out to the homeowners association and discuss with them our perspective about flood risk management in the area, and make sure we better understood their position as well. We did find, as I told you in December, the effort that's needed to really study whether to understand what the flood risk is if we kept the water levels up year-round would require some hydraulic modeling work. And even if MCD staff took the lead on that, we would need some consultant support for that. And that cost was estimated to be $60,000 based on our on-call consultants. And so I informed the HOA members about that cost and asked if they were interested in helping finance that, and they were not at that time when I talked to them in March. But as an alternative, they suggested, well, could you consider just doing a pilot for 1 year and keeping the water levels up year round? And so, and just see how that goes. And I said, that's something that's a worthwhile suggestion. And let me go back and talk to staff to see what the pros and cons of something like that would be. Ultimately, staff is recommending that we do not follow or use, we do not go down a path where we have a pilot program and we stay with the current agreement that was signed in August of 2020, how to operate the lake levels. And the reasons for that are outlined in my one-pager for this topic. Doing a pilot would increase our operating expenses for the operating pump station 4 an electricity bill particularly. We've actually rose that the water level behind the pump station recently and ended up saving tens of thousands of dollars each year because of that. So we would have to backtrack and incur a little more operating expenses. So that's one piece. We're nervous about the equity considerations, about making adjustments for these property owners for their benefit primarily, and having the whole district pay for those expenses. One, we're asking other property owners in other parts of the district to help contribute towards a pipe or culvert replacement, and that's the board's current policy when dealing with culvert replacements. It's the beneficiary benefiting property owners who would pay for that that upgrade, and then it would be the districts there moving forward. And finally, just personally, I'm concerned about our district's credibility if we go in this direction. If for a pilot program, undoubtedly every year we have a handful of storms that are forecasted to come through. There are 2, 3, even 4 inches over a couple of days. That's a lot of water that's coming in, and we would want to drop the lake levels to maximize flood storage in those situations. And in last year in particular, I can remember several of these situations, and what ended up happening is that we got an inch of rain over two days or something like that. So it was a storm event, but not something significant. But if we drop the lake levels, the storm comes through and it's much smaller than what's anticipated, and we have to raise the lake levels back up again. And I do that a couple of times, we start losing some credibility, I think, and kind of crying wolf in certain cases. So because of those reasons, our leaning is not to implement this pilot concept that the HOAs suggested. But in saying that, I would suggest that the staff could let those HOAs know about some potential grant opportunities that could pay for that type of hydraulic modeling study that I mentioned early on in this briefing. So hopefully that was clear enough for you. And if you have any questions or any advice, any direction you'd like me to and staff to go, I'd appreciate it.
Thank you, Bill. Any questions, discussion?
Just one thing, I heard you quantify it. I heard some numbers thrown out there in terms of cost, but it sounded like, so to address an equity concern, for example, if the district was going to incur additional costs by doing that pumping downstream You said we changed the levels and it saved us some money each year over the last several years, and you would have to go back to what that was. Do you have any idea what that cost was? Because then that could be, well, if we were to do something, then maybe those Fairview Lake people would pay just that cost. I'm not proposing that. I'm just curious, because if it's a number like, I don't know, $60,000 a year or something, that also might make things clearer for those.
I wish I had the exact number, Nancy. I know it's tens of thousands of dollars. I want to say it's over 50 grand annually. But it's in that, excuse me, it's in that ballpark. So yes, there's a scenario there as you described. And yeah, other issues with the pilot I didn't bring up are like, well, what's the rainfall pattern going to be like next year or this winter? It could be really dry or it could be really wet. We just don't know. And I'm not sure how representative a given year's storm events would be in advance. So that part would be a little hard to know. And honestly, without, so I'm an engineer, right? So I want to have a little more information about what the risk is of the downstream properties in particular. There's risk for flooding along the lake as well, but I think the risk is higher downstream. And yeah, I'd like to have a little more information before going that direction. But if the board feels like it's a risk they're willing to take, I'm comfortable with that, and we can implement it. But yeah.
Okay.
Bill, I liked your analysis, and I like what you said toward the end of your presentation too, that we're not really willing to front that cost, but if you guys could come up with a grant, great. My only suggestion, you may have already done this, is don't just say, well, go find a grant, but say, we'll help you find a grant, and we will support your efforts to get that grant, and be a partner in that to a reasonable extent. And like I said, you may have already done that. Just
Yep. Fair point. Thank you.
So I just wanted to read off a note that Nikki sent me on the Fairview Lake level. She says she supports, Bill, your recommendation to continue with the current agreement and provide technical support to the interested parties. Bill provides a good summary of the issue and risks. Thank you, Bill. I also think, echoing a little bit on Corky, is these types of issues we have to take seriously in terms of they are our landowners, they're rate-paying landowners. We have storage facilities that are dual purpose in some people's eyes, but our ultimate mission is to protect people and property from flood. So that has to take priority. And also there's a fairness issue with costs of who bears, additional measures that may just benefit few or a few landowners. So I appreciate you calling that out. But it is important that when these items come up, that we seriously look and try to provide support and help.
Yeah, and I have one other comment sort of along those lines. I mean, we do manage it as a whole system, right? So it's not like the lake is separate from the rest of the slough. And we have these raisings and lowerings for the reason to protect against flooding. Okay, this might be a crazy question, Bill, but I'm going to ask it anyway. Is this something we could include in our next master drainage plan? Would this be one of those, do you look at operational scenarios like this as a method of following up within our usual process on this request from the public?
Nancy, that's a great call. Absolutely. We usually have a handful of operational scenarios that we ask the consultant to consider to give for alternatives and then to help us make a decision following that. So yeah, there are a couple I can think of off the top of my head, even from the last one. So in that effort, we certainly can do that. It's going to be another 8+ years or so until we do another master plan like that. I wasn't intending to do another one or until about 10 years from the last one. So it would be a couple of years before that happened, but I think that's a great idea.
Just as an option, you know, if they don't get a grant or something.
Yeah, no, that's great.
All right, any other questions? All right, did you need anything else, Bill, on this, or just kind of head nod that your analysis sounds good? And
yes, if you don't mind, just a head nod or just, you know, some indication to me that the recommendation we made is how you'd like us to move forward.
I think on the record, it seems like the board is, I don't want to put it in everyone's own words, but it seems like we're supportive of your recommendation. Okay. If anybody doesn't think so, speak up now. All right, I think you got your answer.
Thanks all.
Thank you. All right, the next topic, we're going to end the recording.
Yeah, and actually, I guess, Ken, if it's okay with you, I think I'm going to jump off for this, and I think all the other staff are as well, other than Tracy, and so it would probably be helpful to close out with new business and everything and then move into executive session.
That is a great idea. Let's do that while we got the recording going. So executive director update and new business. Jim, you're on.
Okay, my apologies to those of you who are on the F squad because I sent out a little note to you all recently. But if you haven't seen it, perhaps this is a good chance. First of all, I want to say thanks. It's been really fun in my first 3.5 weeks to get to know everyone and fill my brain with lots of new information. It's a great team and they're being really helpful to me. And I want to thank Peggotty too for leaving things in really good shape under difficult circumstances for her. So what I'm observing, and it's really just a reflection of what your staff is already doing, is that a top priority is really maintaining and operating the current system. We need to keep people safe. And so I sort of started off with the focus on trying to get to know Randy and his team a little bit better and trying to say hello to them. And I took a tour with Bill of all of our facilities and really trying to focus on the operations team's safety and some of the projects that we're doing to help them get their work done in a really safe way. It's really fun to get to know them and see how hard they work every day to keep things functioning so well. I'm also focused on trying to understand all of our systems, both from the flood management side, but also the administrative side, learning about everything from our little coffee maker to how to turn the office alarm on and off, and how we do payroll, and then also just the pump stitches and levies and all those other things that we're working on. And as I said, I'm really focused on employee safety and particularly for the operations team. They really do work in some challenging conditions. And also, it's been really great with all the CIP and budget work because it's helping me understand and support the team in identifying those critical maintenance projects that are required to keep the current system really working well. We have some interesting administrative work to do around our COVID policies and the protocols that we have in place to keep people safe, given all of the changing guidance from health authorities and with any luck, soon the governor. So we hope to have an update out to the full staff by the end of the month. And our goal is to increase the availability of the office for people to voluntarily return if they want to. So more to come on that. We're really trying to be thoughtful about all our employees' different needs and give them time to adjust to any changes that we might make. And really a goal is to give people voluntary opportunities to be in the office. I'm also working really hard to get to know the boards. There are a lot of you, as you know, and I'm trying to reach out to every board member individually and making some pretty good progress. I'm glad to report that in my conversations, there's really unanimous support for the organization and a really strong commitment to updating and modernizing the agency. And more importantly, I think to the consolidation under the new urban board. So if you haven't heard from me and you want to have a meeting, I'm anxious to do that. And thank you to those of you who have made time. It's helping me understand kind of the things I need to be focused on. We also have some really interesting perspectives on the board. It's really interesting to go from the professional government employees to the neighborhood people to retired folks who have a lot of different perspectives. And I think it's a really great reflection of the community we serve. Even if it can be complicated sometimes, I think it results in some better decision making. Some sort of priorities that I'm hearing consistently in my conversations with the board. Again, they're all on board with consolidation. There's some details, obviously, that we need to work on, and I can allude to a few of those things in a minute. A real emphasis on continuing to communicate with the public about what we do and where we're headed, and in fact, to probably do more of that. So I'm working with Evan and Colin and others to figure out how we're going to up that game. And I think we're doing well now, but there's obviously more we could do. I think it's probably clear to most of you, given even some of the discussions today, that the various cost allocation issues that we need to work through are on the minds of a lot of people. That includes MCDD's administrative overhead charges, but also the preliminary engineering and design study with the Corps and the overall Portland Metropolitan Levy study. How that's going to get paid for and who's going to benefit from those things are really on board members' minds. So I'm interested in working with the team, and we've been spending some time to come up with ways to really remind all of the boards where they have significant influence over how that's all going to transpire, and how we want to make sure that that work is really transparent to them so they can weigh in effectively. Been hearing a lot of appreciation for the staff, and I just can't thank you enough, from the vote today to just your kindness around the presentations. They really are working hard, and I think it's really nice to have a board that recognizes that. I am hearing some concerns about the Corps and their willingness to engage with the public and work with our local regulations. So more to come on that, how we can try and use our different authorities to resolve some of those things. And then the other thing that I'm hearing a lot about, and I'll talk a little bit more about it, is some challenges associated with homelessness. I'm hearing that from a number of boards and a number of board members. So with that, I'll transition into some near-term priorities that I've been working on with our team. We have a meeting the second week of July with, I think, the right representatives from all of the Portland city bureaus that are implicated in homelessness. And that includes the Office of Management and Finance, which leads the one point of contact efforts for the city to manage homelessness. But it also includes transportation, parks and recreation, environmental services, and the Water Bureau, because we have similar challenges accessing critical infrastructure and protecting critical infrastructure from the impacts of camping. So we are going to be talking again in early July to develop a plan to ensure ongoing access to the various critical facilities. And since oftentimes we have multiple points of access by different organizations, we hope to be able to come up with some new ways of getting the access clear and then providing enough security that we can maintain that access over time. I do think it's going to take some significant effort and time to resolve all of the current challenges associated with homelessness. For example, the existence of certain camps and some of the garbage and other issues that go with that. But I'm confident that we have the commitment from the city and our other partners that we will be able to have ongoing access to all of our pumps and other critical facilities before the rainy season. We're going to talk more about various authorities and how we can streamline some of the ability to make a difference on the ground and be compassionate to the people who unfortunately are have no options available to them other than living outside. So more to come on that. It will be a little bit slow going, but I think between regional investments and the collaboration we're starting to see from the city, that we'll make a dent in it. Some other things that I think are really important are finishing up these budgets, and we'll get that done next week. Finishing all my introductory meetings with board and staff. We have some work underway, particularly for the urban district with the legislature, and we're getting down to the final hours about whether we'll see revenue and what kind of revenue and from which committees. So we're keeping a close eye on that. As you heard earlier in some of the budget work, we have an opportunity to streamline our payroll systems. And I think I'm hearing a little bit of a need that was a little bit underway already, but I want to put a little punctuation point on it to sort of increase the transparency around how we determine pay and promotions. So we're going to be working to kind of update that and provide staff with clearer information about how they can get promoted and grow in their professions. I think that's going to be really important. Kind of a nice follow-up from the work you guys did today on the transition of employees. We do have some challenges with procurement. We need to find some ways to increase our procurement capacity, and we have some ideas around that. And I'm excited to be working with Nick and Hong and the subject matter experts to find some ways that we can make sure we get our work done with the resources that we have available. We have some opportunities too, and Hong's leading some work to improve our knowledge around legal requirements for in-water permitting. And I think we'll be working with Carrie and some others to really make sure that we have all the information we need and that we can streamline our workflow around that and make sure that we're meeting all of our obligations. I think we're doing a really good job now. And I think there's some chances to really improve our relationships with regulatory agencies. So we're looking at that. I'm starting to think through, I had a meeting with Corky, thank you for your time with Corky, to talk about external stakeholder outreach and some introductions, working with the staff to get to know the Corps of Engineers staff and so on. So as soon as I finish with the teams and the boards, I'll be thinking about who I need to start meeting externally. A little bit of that underway now, but more to come. And as I mentioned before on the cost allocation work, really digging in with your great staff to come up with a roadmap for all the boards to deal with the cost allocation opportunities that we have, just from the administrative overhead all the way through to the major projects and the rate setting for the new urban district. Lastly, I want to share that I'm not hearing that much about equity in my intake. So I've reached out both to the Coraggio group and to our internal equity consultant to start to work on how we're gonna elevate that work a little bit more with the boards and internally. So I don't have a specific plan yet, but the fact that I'm not hearing about it makes me think that we need to make sure we put an appropriate amount of focus on it. And then the last thing that I'm starting to think about, and the mission, vision, values work from the new district and elsewhere, to propose to you some clear goals and measures for my first 6 months on the job, so that we have a way of making sure that if I'm not doing a good job, I either am told that I need to improve, or that we're clear that things are going well and we can keep moving forward. So that's what I'd like to tell you today. Sorry it was a little bit long, but there's been a lot going on. And just want to say thanks again for the opportunity to serve as your director and for your volunteer public service. So looking for your feedback, both positive and negative, and I'll do my best to act on anything that I hear. So thank you very much for the time.
Thanks, Jim. And I think Nancy had a comment.
Yeah, thanks for that. That was a nice, a lot of information, but very succinctly stated. I did want to point out one thing for you. You might not be hearing so much about equity. We had been working on it earlier. We lost one of our excellent staff. She got promoted to another organization, but she put together some really good materials for us. And we have a equity subcommittee. So I don't know, Emily, are you the right person to forward that on to Jim? Just show him where it is.
Got it. I just got it this week. So
great.
I'm gonna start digging into it. Yeah.
Okay, because there was a, we got to a certain spot and we were gonna go further, and we lost our staff person. So we would love more attention on this. Thanks.
Yeah, we're gonna come back at you and have you do some work on it. Don't worry.
Yeah, thanks, Nancy, for bringing that up, because that was the one question I had as well. Is we have focused as a board on it, and on the staff level with Nancy, and as board members designated to participate. But now I think it's the time to understand how to operationalize the work and how to keep the momentum going. So appreciate your comments. Also appreciate the homeless coordination. The port's had its challenges as well on its property along 33rd and Marine Drive. And that coordination among agencies is key, because it is a coordinated effort, and also communication of what is being done is even probably more important. I think one of the board members in SDIC yesterday brought it up as a concern, and it's out there, and I think that general public and others are trying to figure out who to go to, and the number one priority I know on the port's part is one, our staff safety, and then trying to work with other agencies having the most compassionate approach to do it, but still protecting life and the environment, as well as you know as much as we can given the current situation we're in.
Yeah, it's terrific that we have the contract with Cascadia, with Rapid Response BioClean. Those are two really progressive things for a small district like ours. So I think they were working before, and then with the pandemic and kind of the loss of some of the other agencies' work for a year, it's just created some more challenges. But you already see some positive change happening. So hopefully over the next year, we'll get back to something a little better for everyone.
Great. Any other questions? Jim's report. All right, Jim, I think
I can go.
You can.
But before I do, I just have really enjoyed working with Hong, and she's bringing a lot of great expertise. I don't have a long run with her, but I've been very fortunate to have her, and she shared some really great background information with me. So with that, I will let you get to your management of your other employee, and thank you again.
Great, thanks so much.
All right, bye.
Bye. All right. The recording's going to end here in just a moment.
Go ahead and formalize it by reading the statutory language to enter the executive session.
Oh, yeah, see, that's why I needed you, Emily. Okay, the MCDD board will now enter executive session pursuant to ORS 192.660(2A) to consider the employment of a public officer, employee, staff member, or individual agent. All right, we're back out of executive session, and in that we discussed Chief Legal Counsel's performance appraisal, and also compensation, as well as highlighting it or proposing a change to our current position description. And so we'll take the performance appraisal first. That was Tracy, do you want to just give a quick summary on the record here about how that was determined and
Yes.
Okay.
So the MCDD board selects staff, and the interim executive director, Peggy Yates, were asked to complete a performance evaluation form providing 360 feedback on the general counsel's performance for the 2020 year. They were asked to rate categories on a 1 to 5 scale, 5 being exceptional and 1 being expectations were not met. The categories were overall legal strategy, board and staff relationship and communication, legal research and review, and communication. The job description was also provided to the raters, so they knew the scope of work of general counsel. And just as an overview, per the current job description, she serves as the primary legal counsel for the district and leads the legal functions and strategy of the district. She's also an executive team member. After HR received the 360 feedback from staff, board members, interim executive director, all of the information was collected and compiled into one performance evaluation form, and that form was emailed to the board, including a self-evaluation by Hong and a job description with a reclassification recommendation. The information was provided to the board, and the executive session was for the board to discuss the documents.
Great. So I will move that we reclass Hong to from general counsel to chief chief legal officer, which includes a pay grade increase pursuant to HR materials.
And the new position description will be made available as soon as Tracy makes the edits that's requested publicly. Do I have a second on that?
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries unanimous. Second motion we need to make is on the pay grade or the pay increase for this year. Can I get a resolution on that?
Okay, I move that we provide the 2% COLA effective January 1st of this year, and also a 2% merit increase.
And I'll second that one too.
Okay, got a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries unanimous. And thank you all. I think that concludes our business, and you've got 6 minutes to spare from our previously scheduled meeting.
Way to bring it home.
I can get lunch before my next meeting.
See you guys.
See you
Bye.
guys.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye.